They tell you attention is life, that being seen is proof that you matter, that if no one is watching, you disappear. But that's the first lie every man swallows, the poison disguised as praise. Because attention doesn't give you worth, it drains it. Imagine a candle under a magnifying glass. The light intensifies, and for a moment it glows brighter until it melts itself into nothing. That's what happens to a man who lives under constant eyes. He burns faster. He becomes spectacle, not substance. The world trains you to chase the spotlight, to post, to prove, to perform. They say, be open, be visible, be available. And you obey, thinking exposure will make you unforgettable, but exposure only makes you replaceable. Because the more attention you absorb, the less mystery you hold. And mystery is oxygen for respect. A man without shadow is a man without gravity. When she can predict every move, every thought, every insecurity, your presence stops pulsing. You become transparent. The modern man thinks being wanted means being seen. He doesn't realize that visibility is the new vulnerability. That being constantly observed turns strength into performance, and performance into dependency. The man who feeds on attention becomes a hostage to it. Every silence feels like death. Every unread message, a mirror cracking. He mistakes reaction for connection and applause for intimacy. But attention is not love, it's hunger, disguised as validation. And when you give too much of yourself to be seen, you disappear in plain sight, because the more they watch you, the less you exist. He thought attention was the same as effort. That love was a matter of showing up more, texting faster, explaining harder. He believed that the more he gave, the more she'd see his worth, so he did what he was taught. He answered every message within seconds. He planned every date, paid every bill, opened every door. He complimented her endlessly, studied her moods like sacred texts. He believed that if he became the perfect reflection of her desires, she'd never leave. At first, she smiled at his devotion. She said, "You're so different from other men." He took that as victory, not warning. Because what she really meant was, "You're too available to be mysterious." Weeks passed. His name lit up her phone less often. His long paragraphs turned into her short replies. And the more she pulled back, the harder he chased. He told himself she was just busy, that women test men by creating distance. But deep down he felt it, the shift from wanted to tolerated. He started mirroring her silence, waited an hour before replying, but every minute of that silence felt like drowning. His mind turned into a war room, drafting new ways to be noticed again. Maybe another gift, another compliment, another good morning. He thought he was fighting for love, but he was fighting for attention. And attention, unlike love, has no loyalty. The irony was cruel. The more he tried to prove his value through visibility, the more invisible he became. He didn't see that every act of overexposure stripped him of the very thing she once admired, his self-containment. He was no longer a man standing in his own gravity. He had become a mirror that only reflected her light, and women don't fall for reflections. They fall for resistance. When she finally left, she didn't say it was because he was weak. She said, "You're just too much, too present, too eager, too certain." He never realized that what she called too much was simply his fear of being unseen. And that fear, not the love, was what she truly walked away from. There's a brutal law written deep in human behavior. Whatever becomes abundant loses value. It's true for gold, for water, and for men. In the social marketplace of modern life, attention is currency, and when you flood the market with your own, the price of your presence collapses. What we call love is often a system of supply and demand. Desire feeds on distance. Mystery amplifies meaning. Scarcity creates tension, and tension creates attraction. The male mistake is not giving attention. It's giving it continuously, because continuity kills contrast. And without contrast, the feminine brain stops feeling polarity. Psychologists call it intermittent reinforcement, the principle behind addiction. It's the reason casinos keep people trapped for hours. Unpredictable reward patterns trigger the deepest levels of dopamine craving. In relationships, that same mechanism works both ways. When a woman doesn't know if she still has you, her brain releases dopamine. When you respond instantly, constantly, predictably, the circuit dies. There's no mystery, no uncertainty, no emotional spike. You become emotional background noise. In evolutionary terms, attention equals investment, but investment only matters if it's selective. A man who gives his focus to everyone broadcasts one message: my energy is cheap, and the feminine instinct is ruthless in detecting cheapness. Women don't consciously think, he's available to everyone, so I'll lose interest. They just feel it. A subtle drop in tension, a fading gravity, because what draws them isn't approval, it's containment. The man who can withhold his attention shows proof of control, and control signals power. That's the secret. Attention isn't about generosity, it's about regulation. It's not the giving that creates value, it's the restraint. A man who gives attention without boundaries becomes entertainment. A man who gives it selectively becomes mystery. And mystery is what rewires the feminine mind from boredom to fascination. In the modern digital world, this principle has mutated into something lethal. Social media turned validation into economy. Every like, every view, every emoji is a microdose of counterfeit importance. And men have become addicts, refreshing their self-worth with every ping. The tragedy is this: the same brain that once hunted, conquered, and built civilizations is now hooked on notifications. He no longer builds, he broadcasts. He no longer leads, he waits to be seen. He confuses visibility with victory, unaware that visibility is the new slavery. Because the man who needs to be noticed is already owned, it always begins small. A text unanswered, a moment of silence. And the man feels it, that sting of being unseen, so he compensates. He sends another message, then another. He tries to fill the gap with presence, thinking proximity will fix what distance revealed. But attention never fills silence. It only amplifies absence. The more he gives, the less it's received, because attention doesn't bridge the gap, it widens it. In the early stages of love, this is where polarity dies. The woman stops feeling magnetized, not because he failed to give enough, but because he gave too much too soon. He made his attention predictable. Predictability is safety, and safety kills desire. At first she loved how open he was. Now she calls it clingy. She once said, "I love how you always listen." Now she says, "You're always around." Same behavior, different context, because in human psychology, the same gesture repeated loses emotional voltage. You see it everywhere. The musician who posts every day and gets fewer likes. The influencer who burns out trying to feed an algorithm that only rewards mystery. The friend who overshares until no one listens. The man who tells his story too often until it stops sounding like strength and starts sounding like need. Attention is like perfume, powerful in small doses, nauseating when it fills the room. A man who floods others with his presence suffocates his own value. Even in culture, the pattern repeats. Celebrities vanish for a year, then return, and the world worships their reappearance. Scarcity ignites fascination. Constant presence breeds fatigue. Because the human brain doesn't not crave what it already owns, it craves what it can fully have. And so, the man who gives constant attention begins to feel invisible. He can't see that he's simply predictable. He mistakes familiarity for connection and the routine of giving for the reward of being seen. But what he's really doing is eroding his own mystery molecule by molecule. The cruel paradox is this: the man who wants to be valued must risk being ignored. The man who demands constant feedback becomes dependent on it. And dependence always smells like weakness. Every social dynamic obeys the same law of diminishing return. Attention is energy, and energy obeys scarcity. The less it's given, the more it's desired. The more it's offered, the more it's devalued. That's why she stops replying. That's why your words lose weight. That's why your kindness turns invisible. It's not because she changed, it's because she adapted. She stopped responding to abundance. Her biology recalibrated to your constant presence until it registered as background noise. And this isn't just about women. It's about society itself. A world flooded with content, voices, and self-exposure has lost the ability to listen. We don't crave wisdom anymore. We crave reaction. And the man who tries to be heard above the noise doesn't realize he is becoming part of it. He's not rising, he's dissolving, because the truth is universal and cruel. The louder you speak, the cheaper your voice becomes. There comes a moment when every man realizes he has become noise. Not a presence, not a memory, just static. A blur of constant giving that no longer registers as impact. He wakes up one morning and feels the fatigue of being too available. He checks his phone and sees the silence where there once was warmth. Messages still exist, but they no longer mean anything. The rhythm is gone, the pulse is flat. Every gesture that once carried meaning has become routine. He's in the room, but unseen. He's speaking, but unheard. And the worst part, he's still trying. He crafts the perfect text, the perfect tone, the perfect apology for caring too much. He keeps feeding a fire that's been ashes for months, because deep down he believes that consistency equals love. That devotion will force the universe to notice him again, but devotion without distance is desperation, and desperation smells like decay. He doesn't understand that his presence, once powerful, has become a mirror of need. Every act of attention now whispers the same thing: please remember me, and the more he tries to remind them, the more forgettable he becomes. His energy is exhausted, not by rejection, but by exposure. He's burned himself under the false sun of constant validation. He's the candle melted by his own flame, still pretending to shine. The collapse doesn't come as a scream, it comes as silence. A long, heavy quiet that stretches across the mind, the kind of silence that no message, no post, no call can fill. He begins to realize the crowd never saw him. They saw the reflection he kept performing. He was never loved for his presence, only consumed by it. He was never respected for his depth, only noticed for his noise. And when the novelty wore off, they left him where every performer ends, on stage alone, applauding himself to the sound of emptiness. This is where many men break. They start deleting themselves piece by piece. They stop speaking their mind because it feels useless. They stop standing firm because it feels punished. And in that quiet implosion, something sacred dies, the self-respect born from restraint. But collapse is not destruction, it's revelation. Because only in the absence of applause can a man hear his own truth again. He starts to see that attention was never the problem. It was the addiction to it. He was never invisible. He was overexposed. He didn't lose them. He lost himself in the pursuit of being noticed. And when that realization hits, when he finally understands that being unseen is not death but purification, a strange calm begins to return. Because once you stop performing, you stop begging to exist. And the silence that used to terrify you starts to sound like freedom. When the noise fades, you can finally start to build again, but this time not from hunger, from silence. There's a system buried beneath the chaos of attention, and if you understand it, you'll never beg to be seen again. These are not affirmations, they're survival rules. They don't make you loved, they make you sovereign. Rule number 1. Attention is a weapon. Wield it, don't waste it. Your focus is currency. Your presence is power. Every glance, every word, every moment of your awareness is energy being transferred. The weak man spends it blindly. The sovereign man invests it selectively. You don't give attention to be polite, you give it to reward alignment. If she disrespects your silence, she doesn't deserve your words. If they mock your absence, they never valued your presence. Attention doesn't create connection, it creates contrast. Give it in doses that remind them you choose, not chase. Rule number 2. Detachment is not coldness. It's clarity. You were taught that caring means being available, that love means constant response. But emotional availability without boundaries is self-erasure. Detachment isn't lack of feeling, it's control over expression. You still care, you just don't leak it everywhere. You choose when to reveal emotion and when to remain a mirror. Because mystery isn't manipulation, it's respect for your own energy. Rule number 3, absence builds gravity. Nature abhors excess. Even the sun hides half the day to remain worshipped. You must do the same. Disappearance creates demand. Distance generates desire. The more rarely you appear, the more deeply you are remembered. When you're always around, you stop being experienced and start being expected. Never let your presence become background noise. Disappear before you're taken for granted. Rule number 4, give attention with weight, not volume. Most men give too much and mean too little. Your attention should feel like currency, rare, deliberate, expensive. When you speak, your silence before and after should echo longer than your words. Presence isn't measured in time spent, it's measured in impact felt. Be brief, be bold, be remembered. Rule number 5, never chase reactions. Guard your center. Validation is the new addiction. Every comment, every view, every reply becomes a hit of dopamine, a microdose of false worth. Stop using feedback to measure existence. Start using discipline to create it. A man who guards his attention becomes immovable. He doesn't panic when unseen. He doesn't celebrate when noticed. He stays centered, calm as a storm that never announces itself. Because true power is not in being visible, it's in being felt. Rule number 6, scarcity is not manipulation, it's design. Scarcity is how you teach others your value. It's not about withholding love, it's about curating access. Not everyone deserves your mind, your time, your explanation. You don't owe availability, you offer presence. The difference is control. Scarcity doesn't push people away. It filters those who never plan to stay. When you live by these rules, attention stops being your addiction. It becomes your language. You learn to speak through absence, to influence through silence, to connect without performing. And slowly, the world begins to orbit you again. Not because you demanded to be seen, but because you finally disappeared with purpose. In the end, it was never about being seen. It was about being centered. The world told you to express, to share, to stay visible, as if visibility meant validation. But they never warned you what happens when you become too exposed. You stop being a man with depth and start being a surface, a mirror for everyone else's projections, a collection of reactions instead of convictions. Attention turns men into performers. Silence turns them back into leaders, because power isn't loud. It doesn't chase. It doesn't repeat itself. Power is the man who can disappear and still be felt, who can stand in a crowded room and radiate calm instead of need, who knows that absence isn't rejection, it's resonance. Every time you withhold your attention, you're teaching the world how to treat you. You're calibrating the economy of your worth. You're proving that you belong to no audience, that your value doesn't fluctuate with applause. And when she wonders why she can't stop thinking about you, when she starts replaying your silence like a melody she can't escape, you'll understand the paradox that every strong man eventually learns. You never needed to be more visible. You needed to be less available. That's the secret currency of masculine energy, controlled scarcity. Because what you don't give defines you more than what you offer. The modern world celebrates exposure, but exposure is corrosion. Every time you trade mystery for attention, you sell a piece of your gravity. But when you guard your silence, your value compounds in the dark. The fewer words you speak, the louder your presence becomes. The less you explain, the deeper they listen. And the moment you stop begging to be understood, people start studying you instead. That's the transformation. From man to myth, from noise to symbol, from reflection to presence, because every man who stops chasing attention eventually becomes what attention chases. So next time you feel the urge to prove your worth, pause. Let the silence work for you. Let the absence become your argument. Let them feel what it means to have lost your focus, because real worth is measured not by who looks at you, but by who still feels you when you're gone. But what happens when you take this too far? When your strength turns into isolation, and your silence becomes a cage instead of a throne. That's the next lesson, the cost of being too strong.